The morning sun painted the Hawaiian coastline in shades of gold and amber as Jake Morrison tinkered with his vintage motorcycle on the beach. His small repair shop sat perched on the cliff above, but he preferred working with his toes in the sand and the sound of waves as his soundtrack. Life was simple here on the remote side of Maui. Far from the tourist crowds and city noise, the peace shattered when something screamed across the sky like a falling star. Trailing smoke and sparks, Jake dove behind his bike as the object crashed into the shallow water 50 yards down the beach, sending up a massive spray that soaked him to the bone. Steam rose from the twisted metal wreckage as Jake approached cautiously. The craft looked like nothing from Earth, all curved lines and strange symbols etched into its hull. As he got closer, he could hear movement inside, followed by what sounded distinctly like cursing in a language he'd never heard. The hull split open with a hiss of escaping gas, and Jake's world tilted sideways. She emerged like a warrior goddess from some fever dream. Her skin was a deep violet that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight, and her hair fell in silver waves past her shoulders. She stood nearly 6 feet tall, with a figure that would have made ancient sculptors weep, and her eyes burned like twin stars. A brilliant amber that seemed to glow from within. But what caught Jake's attention most was the collar around her throat. It was sleek and metallic, pulsing with soft blue light, and it looked anything but decorative. She spotted him immediately, those burning eyes locking onto his with predatory intensity. In 3 fluid strides, she closed the distance between them and grabbed the front of his oil-stained t-shirt. "Listen carefully, primitive," she said, her voice carrying an accent he couldn't place. "I am Captain Zara Voss of the Stellar Command, and I am nobody's property. I don't care what currency they offered you or what threats they made. You will not cage me, you will not sell me, and you will definitely not try to tame me." Jake blinked, taking in her fierce expression, the way her chest rose and fell with controlled anger, and the subtle tremor in her hands that spoke of barely contained violence. Then he glanced at her wrecked ship, back at her torn uniform that revealed tantalizing glimpses of that violet skin, and finally at the collar that was obviously some kind of restraint device. "Okay," he said simply. Zara's grip on his shirt tightened. "What did you say?" "I said okay." Jake gently but firmly removed her hands from his shirt. "You don't want to be caged, sold, or tamed. Got it? You hungry? I was about to make breakfast." For a moment she looked completely lost, like someone had just rewritten the rules of physics in front of her. The collar around her neck pulsed faster, and Jake caught a flicker of something that might have been hope in those amber eyes before it was quickly hidden. "This is some kind of trick," she said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. "Lady, I fix motorcycles and surf when the waves are good. I don't have the imagination for tricks." He gestured toward his small house on the cliff. "Come on, you. Look like you could use some coffee and maybe a first aid kit." Zara followed him, but stayed several steps behind, ready to run or fight at the first sign of trouble. Jake pretended not to notice, focusing instead on the sway of her hips and the way the morning light caught the silver in her hair. As they climbed the narrow path to his house, he couldn't help but wonder what kind of life she'd lived that made. A simple offer of breakfast seemed like a trap. And what kind of people put collars on their own warriors? Jake's kitchen was nothing fancy, just basic appliances and a view of the ocean through salt-stained windows. He moved around the space with easy familiarity, pulling ingredients from the refrigerator while Zara stood rigid by the door, clearly ready to bolt at the first sign of danger. "Coffee or tea?" asked, firing up his ancient espresso machine. "I don't understand your customs," Zara replied stiffly. "Are you trying to drug me?" Jake paused, coffee grounds scattered across the counter. "I'm trying to offer you caffeine. It's what humans do when we meet someone new. Let him ask about the weather." Despite herself, Zara's mouth twitched towards something that might have been a smile. "Your species has strange rituals. You should see us at parties." Jake started the machine and began cracking eggs into a bowl. "So, Captain Zara Voss of the Stellar Command. That's quite a title. What brings you to my little corner of paradise?" The question wiped any trace of amusement from her face. Her hand moved unconsciously to the collar, and Jake saw her jaw tighten. I was being transported to a penal colony. The ship malfunctioned during the jump. Penal colony. Jake flipped the eggs with practiced ease. What did you do? Park in a no-parking zone? I refused an order. Her voice was flat, emotionless. My superior commanded me to eliminate a group of civilian refugees. I chose not to comply. Jake set down his spatula and really looked at her for the first time. The proud set of her shoulders, the way she held herself like a weapon even while injured, and underneath it all, a bone-deep weariness that spoke of battles fought and prices paid. So they put you in chains for having a conscience, he said. Quietly, Zara's eyes flashed. It's not chains, it's a compliance collar. I can deliver pain, induce unconsciousness, or even stop my heart if activated remotely. The casual way she said it made Jake's stomach turn. He moved closer, studying the device around her throat. Up close, he could see it was incredibly sophisticated, with microcircuits visible beneath its smooth surface. Can it be removed? Asked only by someone with the correct authorization codes or ... double quotes. She trailed off, studying his face with new interest. You're not afraid of me, should I be? I could kill you with my bare hands in 17 different ways. Jake nodded seriously. I can think of maybe 3 ways to kill someone, and they all involve power tools. You win. He returned to his cooking, sliding perfectly golden eggs onto 2 plates. But you haven't killed me yet, and you had plenty of opportunity. So either you're playing a really long game, or you're not the monster they tried to make you. They ate in comfortable silence, Zara wolfing down her food like someone who hadn't had a decent meal in weeks. Jake pretended not to notice the way. She kept touching the collar, or how her eyes tracked every movement he made. After breakfast, he led her to his workshop, a cluttered space filled with motorcycle parts and electronic equipment. I might not be able to remove it, he said, pulling out a magnifying glass and some delicate tools, but I might be able to disable the remote functions. Zara went very still. Why would you help me? Jake looked up from his tools, meeting those burning amber eyes, because everyone deserves to be free. And because... double quotes. He hesitated. Because I think you're beautiful, and not just on the outside. Color bloomed across Zara's violet cheeks, and for a moment she looked vulnerable, almost fragile. Then the workshop filled with a soft chime, and a holographic figure materialized between them. The hologram was clearly of the same species as Zara, but male, with harsh features and cold eyes. He wore an elaborate uniform covered in medals and insignia. Compliance Unit 779, the figure said in a voice like grinding metal. Admiral Keck speaking. You will remain exactly where you are. Recovery ships are en route to your location. Zara's face went white, and the collar around her neck began pulsing rapidly. You have 48 hours to prepare yourself for extraction. The Admiral continued. Do not attempt to remove or tamper with your compliance collar. Do not seek help from the local primitives. Failure to comply will result in immediate termination. The hologram flickered and disappeared. Leaving them alone in the sudden quiet of the workshop, Jake looked at the sophisticated equipment around them, and at Zara's terrified face, then back at his tools. Well, he said, picking up a precision. Screwdriver. Looks like we've got 47 hours and 59 minutes to figure out how this thing works. Dark clouds rolled in from the ocean as Jake worked feverishly on Zara's collar, his fingers steady despite the pressure. She sat perfectly still, but he could feel the tension radiating from her body like heat from an engine. Tell me about your world, he said, partly to distract her and partly because he genuinely wanted to know. Valtara is nothing like this, Zara replied, her voice soft. No oceans, no green growing things. Just cities of metal and glass stretching to the horizons. We conquered beauty out of our world generations ago in the name of efficiency. Dick paused in his work, studying her profile. Is that why you saved those refugees? Because you remembered what beauty looks like? They were artists, she whispered. Poets and musicians and painters. The High Command deemed their work non-essential to imperial goals. I was ordered to space them all, but you couldn't. She turned to look at him, and he saw tears glistening in those amber eyes. They showed me their work first, thinking it might buy them mercy. A little girl, maybe 8 years old, had painted a picture of what she thought the ocean might look like. She'd never seen water except in recycled air systems, but somehow she captured ... this. She gestured toward the window where waves crashed against the shore. Jake set down his tools and cupped her face gently in his hands. You're not a monster. Zara, you're a hero. Before she could respond, the sky outside exploded with light. 3 ships, sleek and predatory, descended through the storm clouds like metallic sharks. Their early Zara breathed, panic flickering across her face. Jake grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the back of the house. There's a cave system along the coast. We can hide there until the storm passes. They ran through the tropical downpour, Jake leading them along paths only a local would know. Behind them, searchlights from the alien ships swept across the landscape, growing closer with each pass. The cave entrance was hidden behind a curtain of falling water. Jake plunged through first, pulling Zara after him into the shadowy depths. The sound of the storm faded to a distant whisper as they moved deeper into the cave system. This connects to an underwater grotto, Jake explained, his voice echoing softly off the walls. Air pocket, completely hidden from outside sensors. They emerged into a natural cathedral of stone, lit by phosphorescent algae that painted the walls in soft blues and greens. A pool of crystalline water reflected the ethereal light, and somewhere in the distance, they could hear the muffled boom of thunder. Zara stood in the center of the space, slowly turning to take it all in. It's like something from that little girl's painting, she whispered. When she turned back to Jake, something had changed in her expression. The fear was still there, but it was tempered now by something warmer, more dangerous. Jake, she said, stepping closer to him, they take me, I want you to know, ... They're not taking you anywhere, he said firmly. You don't understand. I'm a trained warrior. I've killed people. I've done things that would make you... Jake silenced her by pulling her against him and kissing her with desperate intensity. She stiffened for a moment, then melted into him, her arms coming up to wrap around his neck. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Zara looked up at him with wonder. In my culture, warriors don't. We're not allowed to feel this. Feel what? Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. Love, she whispered. The word hung in the air between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Outside, the storm raged on, and alien hunters searched for them with deadly intent. But in this hidden sanctuary, surrounded by ancient stone and bioluminescent beauty, they found something neither had expected. Jake traced the line of her collar with gentle fingers. When this is over, when you're free, what will you do? Zara leaned into his touch. I don't know. I've been a soldier my entire life. I don't know how to be anything else. You could learn, Jake said. I could teach you about sunrises and coffee, and the way the ocean sounds when you're falling asleep. You could teach me about the stars. She kissed him again, softer this time, full of promise and possibility. I never imagined, she murmured against his lips, that freedom would feel like this. Thunder crashed overhead, but neither of them noticed. In each other's arms, they had found something worth fighting for, something worth risking everything to protect. Dawn broke gray and sullen over the island as Jake and Zara emerged from the caves. The alien ships had withdrawn during the night, but Jake knew they'd be back. Predators like that didn't give up easily. They made their way back to Jake's house, moving carefully through the underbrush. The workshop had been ransacked, his equipment scattered and broken. But the most important piece was still intact, a small device he'd hidden in his motorcycle's engine compartment. What is it? Zara asked as Jake retrieved the object. No. Bigger than his thumb? Signal disruptor, he said, attaching it to her collar with practiced efficiency. Won't remove the collar, but it'll block any remote signals. No more Admiral Kex dropping in uninvited. As if summoned by his words, 3 figures materialized on the beach below. But these weren't Zara's captors, Jake could tell immediately. By the way Zara's posture changed, tension flowing out of her shoulders like water. "Friends?" he asked. "Rebels," Zara replied, and there was something in her voice Jake couldn't identify. Relief, maybe, or regret. The three aliens climbed the path to the house. Two were clearly warriors like Zara, scarred and hard-eyed. The third was smaller, older, with intricate tattoos covering her arms, and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. "Captain Voss," the tattooed woman said formally, "I am Commander Nix of the Liberation Fleet. We've come to extract you." Zara straightened into military attention. "Commander, how'd you find me?" "Your ship's beacon. We've been tracking you since you escaped the prison transport." Nix's eyes flicked to Jake, dismissive. "Gather your things. We depart in 10 minutes. "Wait," Jake said, stepping forward. "She doesn't have to go with you." The two warrior aliens reached for their weapons, but Nix raised a hand to stop them. "And you are? Jake Morrison? This is my home, and Zara is welcome to stay as long as she wants." Nix smiled, but it was cold as space. How noble. But Captain Voss has obligations. To her people, there's a war to fight, primitive. Real soldiers understand duty. Jake felt anger flare in his chest. Real soldiers also understand choice, something your people seem to have forgotten. "Jake." Zara's voice was quiet, but it cut through his anger like a blade. When he looked at her, he saw pain in those amber eyes. "She's right. My people are enslaved. Children are dying. I can't abandon them for." The words hit him like a physical blow. "So that's it? You're just leaving? I have to?" Tears were streaming down her face now. "You don't understand. I'm not just a soldier. I'm a symbol. Other warriors look up to me. If I disappear now, the rebellion dies." Commander Nix stepped between them, her expression softening slightly. "Your feelings for the primitive are understandable, Captain, but misguided. What future could you have here? He can't even leave his own planet." "Actually," Jake said quietly, "I can." All four aliens turned to stare at him. Jake walked to his motorcycle and popped open a hidden compartment in the gas tank, revealing a collection of crystalline objects that pulsed with inner light. "Hyperdrive crystals," he said, holding up one of the gems. "Pulled them out of a ship that crashed here 5 years ago. Been saving them for a rainy day." Zara's eyes widened. "Those are worth a fortune. You could have bought passage to any system in the galaxy." "Didn't have anywhere I wanted to go," Jake replied. "Until now." Commander Nix examined one of the crystals, and for the first time, she looked impressed. "These are military grade. Did you get them, like I said? A ship crashed. The pilot died on impact. But before he went, he told me something interesting. Said there was a human colony ship that disappeared 200 years ago. Said humans might not be as primitive as the galaxy thinks." The silence stretched between them until one of the warriors spoke up. "Commander, if he's telling the truth about human capabilities, ... I know," Nix replied. She turned back to Jake, studying him with new interest. "What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Morrison?" "Simple trade," Jake said, moving to stand beside Zara and taking her hand. "I give you the crystals and whatever help I can provide. You give her a choice." Zara squeezed his hand so hard it almost hurt. "Jake, you don't understand what you're offering. This isn't a vacation. It's war. Real war, with real casualties." "I know." Jake looked at each of the rebels in turn, then back at Zara. "But I also know that some things are worth fighting for. I'd rather die free among the stars with you than live safe and alone on this beach." Commander Nix considered this for a long moment. "Very well, Mr. Morrison, but understand, once you leave this world, there may be no coming back. Are you certain this is what you want?" Jake brought Zara's hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. "Never been more certain of anything in my life." For the first time since he'd known her, Zara smiled without reservation. "Then we fight together," she said, "for freedom, for love, the right to choose our own destiny." 6 months later, Jake stood on the observation deck of the rebel flagship Starfire. Watching a massive Imperial dreadnought burn against the starfield, the Battle of Kepler Station was won, but the cost had been high. Too many good people had died today. Impressive work on those shield modifications, Commander Nick said, joining him at the viewport. Your human engineering principles saved half the fleet. Jake nodded absently, his attention focused on the tactical display showing scattered debris and rescue pods. Any word from the boarding parties? Captain Voss secured the station 20 minutes ago. The orbital defense grid is ours. Relief flooded through Jake like a physical thing. In the month since leaving Earth, he'd learned that loving a warrior meant living with constant fear. Every mission could be the last. Every goodbye might be forever. The deck doors hissed open, and Zara strode in, still wearing her combat armor, but with her helmet tucked under her arm. Her silver hair was matted with sweat, and there was a fresh scar along her jaw, but her amber eyes were bright with victory. The station commander surrendered, she announced to the assembled officers. Intelligence estimates this will free up supply lines to 12 systems. A cheer went up from the bridge crew, but Jake only had eyes for Zara. She caught his gaze across the crowded space and smiled. That private smile she saved just for him. Later, the quiet of their shared quarters, Jake helped her out of her armor while she debriefed him on the mission. It had become their ritual, him tending to her wounds while she processed the violence of the day. The collar's completely dead now, he said, running his fingers along her throat where the device had been. He'd finally managed to remove it. 3 weeks ago, but the pale line where it had rested was still visible against her violet skin. Sometimes I still feel it, Zara admitted, leaning into his touch. In my dreams I can still hear Admiral Kex's voice commanding me to kill, to destroy, to be the perfect weapon. But you're not a weapon, Jake said, pulling her close. You're a person. You're my person. Zara tilted her head back to look at him, and he saw that familiar wonder in her eyes. The same expression she'd worn that first morning on the beach when he'd offered her coffee and freedom. I never expected this, she said softly. When I crashed on your world, I thought my story was over. I was ready to die rather than be enslaved again, and instead I found out what it means to truly live. She kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of promise. I love you, Jake Morrison. It's not because you freed me from the collar, but because you showed me what freedom really means. Through the viewport, stars wheeled in their eternal dance. Jake thought about the strange path that had brought them together. Crashed ship, a broken warrior, a simple offer of breakfast and kindness. So what happens now, he asked. War's not over, but we've struck a real blow today. Zara was quiet for a moment, considering. Nix wants me to take command of the new recruits, former Imperial soldiers who've switched sides. It would mean a promotion, a real chance to shape the future of the rebellion. But it would also mean more time apart, more missions, more chances for one of us not to come home, Jake understood. In the months they'd been together, he'd learned to read the subtext in everything she said. She was asking what he wanted, but more than that, she was asking what he thought they could build together in a galaxy at war. Remember what you told me about that little girl's painting? He said finally. How she'd never seen an ocean but somehow captured its essence anyway? Zara nodded. That's what love is like, Jake continued. We can't see the future, can't know what's coming, but we can paint it anyway, with hope and faith and the belief that beautiful things are worth fighting for, even if it means risking everything. Jake smiled and pulled her closer, feeling her heart beat against his chest, strong and steady and alive, especially then. Outside their window, the stars continued their ancient dance, indifferent to human hopes and alien dreams. But inside their small sanctuary, 2 hearts beat as one, defying the darkness with their light. The rebellion would continue. There would be more battles, more losses, more impossible choices to make. But they would face them together, 2 souls, who had found in each other something worth more than freedom itself. Love, and in a galaxy where compliance collars and imperial edicts tried to reduce beings to mere functions. Love was the most rebellious act of all. As Jake held Zara close and felt her breathing slow into sleep, he realized that sometimes the best adventures began not with a dramatic quest, but with a simple question. You hungry? I was about to make breakfast. Everything else, all the wonder and pain and joy that followed, was just the universe's way of saying yes.